This evening we have a different speaker. Dave is having a night off, and we have our resident tram vestite himself, Dr. Bob Tebb, and he's going to talk us through the history of Blacolvesley and the Blakesley Hall Railway. In the archive room we do have Dave. He is here, hassling from the sidelines, and we've also got one of the stalwart museum volunteers, Robert Fox, with us as well. So if people are chipping in, we will be here. I'm going to hand over to Bob. Just slide it that way a little bit. So
okay,
you just press the arrow keys.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. Thanks everybody for tuning in. How long you stay with us, we'll await with interest. But thank you. The aim really tonight is to sort of give you the history, the story of what is probably the world's oldest workable internal combustion engine railway loco of any gauge or type, which is Blacolvesley, and also about the railways it ran on and the owning family. Now, I have been accused of being a tram fan, so I'm afraid you're not getting away without this. This is a 15-inch gauge tram just north of Queensland, just north of Brisbane in Queensland in 1988. I think it's long gone now, is this site, but for those who know the ratty people, on the top deck is Matthew's brother Pete. So anyway, on to real stuff. Blacolvesley. Nobody knows how to pronounce it for sure. It is, a lot of people seem to think it's connected with the Doomsday Book because it's about that sort of time, but apparently it's not. It's actually taken from the carriages rolls of 1203. So very modern compared to that, but that's just a little background info for you. So this is the well-known picture. It's an F-Moore shot. Behind the fence in the background, behind the trees, is the East and West Junction Railway, later the Stratford-on-Avon and Midland Junction. We'll come back to various aspects of this pic later, but it's quite interesting. It shows it with 3 bogie coaches. The loco, the original loco, Kagny, was delivered with 10 four-wheelers, and the 10 four-wheelers made 3 sets of 3 bogie coaches. One body was scrapped, and all the bogies, the wheel sets, were used for other purposes, including that which we'll see as we go on. It was actually a very small estate. Blakesley is only a tiny village. Wood End is also a tiny village, and the entire estate is the area that's in the shaded portion. And as you can see, it's right against the East and West Junction line, and it is also parallel with where there's a stream running through, which is probably called the Black Ooze, which might be part of the reason for Blacolvesley, but we're not too sure. But the point about it, it makes that where the stream is and where the railways are was flat, near enough flat. Move away from that and you're going up the hillsides, and that's where you see gradient changes quite a bit further on. And strictly speaking, Blakesley Hall is actually on the south side of that stream, and therefore ought to be called Wood End Hall rather than Blakesley Hall. But I only ever found it referred to as Wood End Hall once. Otherwise, it's Blakesley. Right, next, go to the next one. Yeah, it's just a nice picture of the hall there. It got modified at various times. The squire had it extended at the far end with a little more stuff, but otherwise it's just a nice country house essentially, but it wasn't a major estate. So where did the family come from that produced the money to have nice toy railways? This is a sketch of the layout. On the far right, you can see the station area where it connected with the East and West Junction, and in various forms. So the bit heading sort of southwest was the original station with passing loop, and then the bit to the southeast was the later station without a passing loop. So originally it was built with a passing loop, and then it was built without. Then it was converted to be without one. And on the far left of the picture, the section between sort of B4 culvert and the dotting bit at the bottom end, that isn't on any of the plans that we have done by Greenlee or anything else. And there's a 1910 extension, but we'll see the effect on the gradients. this is Greenley's and Bartholomew's map of it, as you can see, fairly flat. And then the last extension, which has got one in 30s, one in 24s on it, and the final extension, which was a similar length, is probably the same gradients again. So it was pretty vicious railway for pleasure. No other way really of describing it. I'm sure people would love the permanent way gang in action there. The squire you can see is in the middle with a surveyor's pole. I love the guy on the left. I think he's a real sort of village people type.
Yeah, it's a look of Keith Herbert.
It's also we don't know the date, but the squire looks fairly young, so we're guessing it's probably about the time the first part of the railway was built, which was 1902. They were very much into trying to establish their name. So this is what was the Red Lion, and it became the Bartholomew Arms in relatively recent times, but they got the wrong logo, motto, sorry. So that is what a window, stained glass window that was in Blakesley Hall. That was a Phil Kingston picture, the original historian of the line. And he sent me that, but it's got the Deo Fidens Persistas, which is the correct logo. And at the top of the picture, it's got CB, which is Charles Bartholomew, who's the squire, and his father. Blakesley Hall, he was very much a motorist rather than a rail fan. Here he is with 3 of his cars. He is standing in the middle with a stick by the middle car, and his son is driving the second one. But at that time, nobody could be called a respectable gentleman unless they had at least 3 cars. And he did. He had 4 or 5. And in the garage, he had a turntable, so he could drive the car straight into the garage and then spin it round and drive out again.
Height of decadence.
Yeah. I've only ever encountered it once with the boss of South Wales Transport, who lent me his car one night in Cardiff and said, when you finish with it, just park it on there, and if you do it right, as you stop, it'll give a tweak and it'll turn around on its own. And it did. But the squire himself, looking very suave or whatever. Now, where did they get their money? They owned several collieries around the Woolmill area, Barnsley, Woolmill area. And this is a lovely picture, I think, of the begrimed miners trudging home. Didn't have pithead baths in those days, you wait for it. But I think the truly delightful shot is the bonneted young girl on the cart who's guarding it. And you can see that it's the Barnsley British Cooperative Society Pure Mineral Waters. And the eerie nest looking down, keeping an eye on all the people walking by to and from work. But their engineering prowess of the Bartholomew family was actually canals. And this is on the Aaron Calder Canal, which was looked after by Thomas Bartholomew. And his greatest invention was the Tom Pudding compartment boats. Each of these tugs, and we'll see them a little bit later, each of the pans could carry 35 tons. They were in trains they could go up to 30 wagons in a train, 30 pans in a train, which is 1,000 tons of tear weight. And they started in about 1865. And this is at Newlyn Basin, where the things were repaired and such like, steam tugs and so on. But what was amazing, I found in 1973, I was able to photograph a set of puddings working up the Don navigation, the neighbouring waterway, which was Charles Bartholomew's waterway, not Thomas Bartholomew's waterway. So it's got Thomas Bartholomew's Tom Puddings on a Charles Bartholomew waterway, and in the background is Charles Bartholomew's South Yorkshire Railway with a train of coal wagons heading for Goole, as the Tom Puddings would do, having been loaded at Doncaster, will then go to Goole for unloading using railway sort of convoy horses and things. They were magnificent wooden voice coaling plants and such like. But that was taken in 1973. And again, for those who know, that's Kath on the left. A few years ago.
Oh, yesterday.
What was strange with them is you could only get, because of the lengths of the locks, you couldn't get more than 11 put pans through at once, but you didn't split the trains. They sort of put a very long length of rope between number 11 and number 12. So this has got the first 11 plus so in the lock pound being raised.
Oh, very clever.
And those are sitting outside drifting around. And then they'd open all the lock gates again and bring the other lot in with those going out. So they could actually move fairly fast. So when everybody thinks of British canals as being low carrying capacity, etc., and no great feelings to them, by 1861, you've got a railway, a canal system here, which could be taking 1,000 tons at a time with no great difficulties. But just to improve things even more, rather than Haywood's minimum gauge, the Bartholomews went for maximum width on standard gauge. So here's one of the puddings. It's been drawn out of the water on a ramp with a rope going around the system. So that steam loco has pulled it out around the long system. They're 15 foot wide. They hold 35 tons each. And that one and another one would then be taken the 2.5 miles to St. John's Colliery on standard gauge, where they were loaded with the coal, and the whole lot was brought back then to there. So it saved two transshipments effectively.
Okay, 35 tons is a lorry now, isn't it?
Yeah. It's, as I say, it was hefty stuff that they were going for, and they just seem to be totally unknown for it, the Bartholomews. This work that they did. I mean, they stitched up the South Yorkshire and West Yorkshire and West Riding canal systems very well between them, but it's all sort of died away. Now, this one is a slightly jokey one in the sense that because Charles Bartholomew particularly was into canals and then into railways, he did various modifications. So this is Rotherham today, Rotherham Station today, well, actually about 11 months ago. And he wanted to build a canal through Rotherham rather than the stuff sitting on the river, because it was a bit of a tidal bit of river, not tidal, but messy one with stones. So he built a new canal through Rotherham Centre to bypass the river. About 2 years after that, he then decided he wanted to build a railway through Rotherham. But unfortunately, the Midland Railway wouldn't play ball, so he didn't get an Act of Parliament. What he did was very cleverly diverted his new canal waters back into the river and built a railway on his canal bed. And ever since, Rotherham Station tends to get flooded rather often. And I say this was about 11, 12 months ago. This is on the Britain's fantastic tram train service route, really shows the progress. So you've got electrification, you've got three or four diesel services and that, but yet nobody's going anywhere by tram or train.
Yeah.
But I'll go to stuff. What the Bartholomews were also interested in very much was churches, but not in the Haywood way of ding-dong bells, but of stained glass. So this is a panel stained glass and other castings. This one's at Darfield Church because they were involved in many of the churches. And again, we've got the Dio Fidens Persistas, and it's been given by Charles William Bartholomew of Blakesley Hall in 1915. So, wheels within wheels on these things. Now, back to more interesting, or onto more interesting stuff. One of the nice pictures, in 1902, he bought Cagney and 10 coaches, Class D Cagney. On the footplate are his daughter Ivy and son James. On the far right of the picture is Percy Wyatt, who was the engineer factotum, or whatever I suppose is the best term for it. And all the other kids are dressed up with engine driver hat bands or guard hat bands and such like. But you can see quite nicely as well these strange bogies that these little four-wheelers were mounted on. The thing that confuses everybody are these two photographs which appeared in the Model Engineer which show 2 trains on the railway, and one of them is uncertain. Basically, the open coaches are the originals of the railway's own. The other Cagney and covered top carriages, we think, are from one of the exhibition lines of around that sort of period. Not sure totally of the details, and it's still a little uncertain, but it's been something to educate everybody for many years.
They're like the coaches the real miniature railway have, aren't they?
Yeah,
in
yeah.
that Kagny style.
Yeah, the closest I found, I think, is the Alexandra Palace
Mhm.
ones of about the same period, but they're certainly Blakesley anyway. Now, at one point, Mr. Bartholomew, Squire Bartholomew, was persuaded to lend his Cagney to the Sutton Coalfield Miniature Railway to help out when they were short of things. And when they'd finished with it, they restored it. Bassett Lokes restored it to a fair extent. This is it coming back to Blakesley and on the engine shed spur for that. It's a fairly standard Class D Cagney. We've got some other shots which come in. What's the main thing that makes it unusual is it's got footboards on the tender, outside the tender. Because if you've ever driven the actual one of the Cagneys, there's not much room on the end on the tender there. So that is certainly a genuine one. That's got 1902 on the plate, so we know that's a 1902 genuine. But the slight confusion is which came first, the chicken or the egg? So in 1902, he got an American style Cagney train for his layout, but also hanging in Blakesley Hall was this painting, another F. Moore, which had been done specially for him. Unusually, it's an F. Moore not on a black and white photo, it's on a line drawing. And it's one of, these were the Buchanan locomotives. Most of them were 6-foot drivers. 2 of them, 869 and 870, were 6'8" drivers. And the big one had 7'2" drivers with splashes. And that's the one that's accused of achieving 101, 102 miles an hour before Flying Scotsman.
Right.
And such like. But so Cagney's did produce it as a 99 type, and here is a 999 version of the Cagney, 22-inch gauge Cagney, and I don't think they've got the wheels quite in proportion to the rest of it for a 7'2" drivers, but I found that in Florida in 1988, I think, quite a while ago anyway. It's been restored since, and it does actually operate.
It wasn't in use there, was it?
No. No, but somebody has restored it in California and kept it going like that. Drawings, very peculiar on the railway. Bartholomew was an engineer, but didn't do any drawings himself. Greenlee only did the gradient stuff and didn't really bother with anything else. And this has turned up, which was an LMS signalman in Blakesley mainline station, for want of a better term, who produced this drawing. And it helps to show why Blakesley never got visited by things like Little Giant and other Bassett locos for test purposes, because they were so close together. And it's the fact of this vicious curve to line up with the actual standard gauge siding. That was far too tight a curve to get anything round. You could get a tip wagon round it, but you couldn't get any other form. And the original station was actually totally parallel to the road. It's a north-south road. It turned in sharp to that. But that's the nearest we've got. So say no photographs seem to have appeared decently of it, but it's quite a nice view of it there. This is the original station with the full train load of 3 Arctic, but 3 bogie coaches, the original Cagney. A young James is on the footplate with Percy, and again everybody's in nice uniforms and things. Carriage, the station building is fairly plain and simple, but as I say, it didn't last long, and it was moved very quickly by about 90 degrees to get it closer to the actual standard gauge system. Then progress came. By 1905, Bartholomew, being a craftsman, but got himself a locomotive Petroleia, which is a 444. The books say it has one cylinder, and the other book says it has two cylinders, so nobody's really sure. 19, both sort of same date issues of different magazines have got different things, but it is a 444, and it's got 6 hopper wagons, but the bogies on the from Petroleia and the bogies of the big flat wagon are all standard Blakesley built bogies to use up all the wheel sets that they've got. That's a view looking down from the bridge. It shows the Cagney, sorry, it shows the Petroleia again with its train down there, and you can see it's now very tight into the SMJ line with its building, and there's a footpath straight across out onto the platform there. So, and interestingly, you couldn't get onto the station building on that side of the tracks without going onto the platform first and then entering the station building from the platform. There was no actual route in from the goods yard.
And is the sharp curve in the background
It's starting
where the gate is?
Next beyond it, you go
Right.
past that. There's the gate, as you say. There's then the roadway, trackway, or whatever to the building, and then you can just see it on the original
Right,
leg. It's
okay.
just turning sharp to go around to line up with the standard gauge. But it would have been impossible to have taken an engine round it. So they lost their chance there. Get another F more picture of the railway. And what's nice, I think, about this one, but it's a nice picture anyway, it's got the squire on the left. In the train, one of the ladies in white is his partner, not his wife, because he got married. His wife lasted there about 5 or 6 years and decided that Blakesley was a bit too rural and not at all suitable for her, and she disappeared. She never got divorced, so he was officially still married to her till she died in 1943. The squire himself died later. Died in 1919. But what is interesting about this picture is the method of constructing the track. This almost, well, predates modern railway things of doing things. They didn't create a graded route for the railway. They chucked a load of ballast down. So where you'd got a possible little cutting, as on the far left of the picture, you went into that as far as you could. But after that, you chucked as much ballast down as you needed to create a near enough level after everything else, which is what happens today with the railways and things. Unfortunately, it meant that when the line was eventually abandoned, or sections were, well, here was a perfect opportunity to grab a load of ballast for doing whatever with. So the traces of the railway became very, very difficult to find. That's a closer view of one of the two pictures with two trains. And you can see the massive length. They were on two lengths of rail, 16-foot lengths of rail upside down. So it was a real good home conversion thing with the three Kagny carriages on 2 Cagney and Blakesley created bogies. And that's what survived. Many years later, after umpteen changes of location and stuff, and we'll come to many of them later, one bogie survived at Saltburn. Went to somebody's house after Saltburn Railway bus company closed. Eventually, they dug it out again, and they put it back to the railway. And I managed to get it from them in exchange for a couple of ratty wheel sets and things. But it's a pure, genuine, home-built Blakesley carriage, essentially. The wheel sets are not right, but everything else, the hornways and everything, are right, and you can still see traces of the original red paintwork on the outside and a bit of green on the inside, which may be later. This is a nice view, and it's the only picture we know of which actually shows standard gauge and 15-inch gauge together. East and West Junction number 4, and its train. The only bogie carriage on that picture, and the only bogie carriage anywhere near Blakesley, is the 15-inch gauge one by the gentleman standing near the foreground. because they had bogie carriages on the Blakesley Railway. The East and West Junction did not have bogie carriages. It was all four-wheelers, I think, there.
It's properly squished into the station yard, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And they got a the gardener looked after the hedges and everything. It's and you can see the apex of the 15-inch gauge station building, which has now been rusticated to fit in with everything else. So that's quite nice, I think. Right, Blacolvesley itself. He decided he wanted an outline, steam outline locomotive. So effectively, Blacolvesley also became the world's probably first steam outline loco. This isn't quite right in its drawing, but it's Greenley's original drawing, and it's more or less right in detail. The engine is in the middle of it. Slightly different engine was actually used, and we'll see that in a minute. There's a huge water tank in what's basically the boiler area. The chimney, the smoke box area, was actually the cooling water tank, the cooling system radiator, and a set of an annular form, and we'll see that later. And in the middle, from the engine, obviously, connected via bevel gearing to the gearbox, which was quite a complex little gearbox. 3 forward speeds, 1 available return if you wanted it, but there was actually a dog clutch, so it could go 3 speeds forward, 3 speeds back. And you've got the silencer box. Obviously, like a good steam loco, the exhaust was fed through the radiator and up through the chimney. So the harder it was working, the more it pulled air through a radiator grill at the front to keep it going. And as any good safety system should have, the driver sat on a petrol tank with a battery between his legs. Now, the back bogie is a genuine Little Giant 4-wheel bogie. The front bogie is 3/4 of a standard Little Giant bogie, because one of the axle boxes and the frame that the horn lay is upside down because of dealing with complications of the gearbox, which wouldn't fit. So it's only 3/4 of a proper Little Giant. That's the car that it came from, an NAG hook. And the reason they chose that is because it was a very narrow crankcase, so it would therefore fit between the 15-inch gauge. That car was quite a popular car for its time. That was a later version of their crest. New automobile company, effectively. But for some reason in the 30s, it became the National Automobile Company, and I can't think why.
So did he sacrifice the car to get the engine and gearbox?
No, I think he actually bought it from the agent.
Right, okay.
Yeah, they had an office in Longacre in London, and I'm sure the squire by then was a member of the Royal Automobile Club and such like around the corner, and therefore I think he did a deal with them and got it. So you can see that it's a very narrow crankcase, and it's actually fitting between the inside frames of the system. So it was pretty tiny, 1502 cc's. So quite a hefty engine, not much power, but quite a hefty engine. And it's also worth noting, because of later pictures, the depth of the frames, the loco frames, which are pretty deep. But we'll come back to that in due course. The gearbox was a patent gearbox, Wicksteed patent, who later produced a lot of fairground equipment, e.g. the stuff at Ravenglass, and the tube expanders, which were the same as the ones that we had at Ravenglass. So they're quite a firm, and they really ran the Wicksteed Railway down in Bedfordshire.
Well, our playgrounds.
Yes, yes, it's all Wicksteed stuff. Oh, yeah. That's what I say. They became quite an important. But that one's number 58, and it's actually quite unusual in that it had 3 separate cone clutches. And because it was on a crankshaft, if you adjusted the things carefully, you could actually slip disengage one gear while slip engaging the next. So you could keep power applied all the way through, up and down the gearbox. So it was and you could almost do that now. The gearboxes, the clutches are pretty worn. I say to be polite. But I have done it, and it but don't do it too often, sort of thing.
No.
There's not much left into that, but that is still there, buried in the system. The loco was delivered on the 11th of September 1909 to Blakesley in a primer of some form, and it looked quite a fine loco. It's difficult to argue whether it's got Northeastern Railway, or LNWR connotations, or LSWR or others, but it's it's stylish. And beneath the smoke box door, you can see the radiator and the grill, which lets the water through, lets the air through to the water. So pretty stylish, and I don't think many locos have actually outlasted it in terms of the good looks and such like. I think they're pretty fine design. Was that one? Okay, photo was taken at the same time on the same occasion. All the rogues: Charles Bartholomew, Bassett Loke, Mr. Green from Bassett Loke's factory, Greenley, and James Bartholomew, the squire's son, who, strictly speaking, should not be James Bartholomew, because he was James Floyd, because Charles, the squire, wasn't married.
Right. So that was from the partner. Yes.
Yes, this was from the partner.
Okay.
And interestingly, both for him and his sister Ivy, their birth certificates are such a mess that they actually had to issue new birth certificates, amending everything on father's name, father's occupation, mother's name, by about 1912 or so, just to try and keep the peace. But, yeah. And that's how it stayed. And ultimately, the squire, Charles William Bartholomew, made a decree in his wills that if any female member of the family or whatever fails to use the surname Bartholomew in the future, they shall be cut off from all the monies and everything.
Oh.
But then didn't do aught about it.
Well, you can't when you're dead.
No,
Yeah.
this is true.
Yeah.
But he was around for a few more years.
Oh, fair enough.
He survived till 1919. This is the only picture we know of which shows the squire on, in inverted commas, one of his locos, i.e. Blacolvesley, with obviously Bassett Loke alongside.
Greenley's nearly smiling in that because he doesn't know.
No, it's not a. Well, obviously, there must have been a successful trial run, basically, with it. So I think that one's really quite nice on it. And then just a couple of pretty pictures showing them when it finally got painted, and the name. The crest is basically a goat, because that was on the shield. We saw earlier three goats. And the name Blacolvesley, which, as I say, is from carriages rolls of about 1200 or thereabouts, painted in Great Northern green, and we believe correctly with red framing, but we're not absolutely sure because the frith pictures aren't totally convincing on that. But yeah, it's a nice thing. Better view, and you can see the east and west junction in the background on its embankment. And again, you can see there the very good quality ballast and depth of it used to create this strange type of railway. There were about 4 bridges over the stream as well, and they didn't have proper abutments. They look very good, but when you actually look at the construction stuff, there's no proper abutments there at all. It survived, so difficult to argue with. Again, same variation. Infuriatingly, nobody ever took the photograph from the other side. So we've got nothing, no idea. And yet it was the wall of the Hall Gardens was on this side where the photographer is standing. But it does make you wonder, because when that picture would have been taken about 1912, 1913, how many of those people actually survived the Great War? Because we think it was taken on the occasion of the Railway Club visit. He got himself into the Railway Club with Bartholomew as a vice president, and therefore there were quite regular visits by that club to Blakesley. You know, a nice trip out from Euston to Elizabeth, and then up on that line. This is taken on the last extension, which isn't on Greenley's plans, a farm manager's bungalow, but later became the cowman's bungalow. And again, you can see the peculiar business of using, just get loads of ballast, tip it down and build the railway on top of it. Certainly when I went there in 2003, that bungalow was still complete. It's built of artificial breeze blocks, but still standing rather nicely. That's perhaps a better view showing further up the line and shows the sort of gradients that they were dealing with. And the fact that basically it was all open countryside there. The squire's estate was very small. And he's really at the extreme ends of it by that. Yeah, sorry. They did issue proper tickets, Edmondson card tickets. This is, we think, a child ticket. We believe they were issued from about 1903, perhaps 1906 to about 1910. And that was probably about it. So there's not many issued for one day in the year. There was a shilling version as well, which can only conclude was an adult version and a child version. The one that I've got, which is a 6-penny one, has 10 imprinted on the back. So whether that's 10th of September 1910, nobody's too sure, or whether it was just a thing for the knowing the numbers. But it ceased to be the East and West Junction by 1909, was it? And it became the Stratford-on-Avon and Midland Junction Railway. But it's nice that they have proper tickets. I suspect the admission to the fete cost 6pence as well, because in fact you could actually get a ticket from several miles away on the SNJ also for 6pence.
Right, okay.
So I think it was a bit of a bluff. Anyway, we've seen Petroleia, which didn't look a very nice loco. It was a 444, very primitive one, but you know, what were things supposed to look like in those days? So somewhere along the line, Bartholomew managed to persuade Bartholomew to rebuild his Petroleia from a 444 something or other to an 044 sort of steam outline, just to infuriate everybody interested in the railway and history and technology and everything else. That's the only known photograph of it, and you can't see the side and you can't see the wheelbase and you can't see anything else of it at all. But that survived, and it was regarded as a fairly damp squib.
Right, okay.
It was not popular, and it doesn't really appear in anything else, which is probably therefore why it wasn't photographed very much. But
it's an interesting mix, isn't it? A miniature and narrow gauge.
yes, yeah, a bit like the Rat.
Yeah, and the nice rusticated station.
Yeah, that's a lovely feature of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet contrasting that in totally is the banner signal, which is standard railway type banner signal, which we think were really used as point indicators rather than as anything more sophisticated than that. Because Bartholomew had several collieries in and around the Barnsley area, he was obviously well in with the Midland Railway and the Great Central Railway. And the Great Central Railway came down past Blakesley at Woodford Hulse, only a mile or two away. So he instituted, in about 1911, he instituted this cup, the Bartholomew Challenge Cup, for first aid competitions amidst the staff of the Great Central Railway every year. So every year in about September, October time, everybody was from the Great Central doing ambulance work and such like first aid stuff was invited to Blakesley Hall to compete. The group topped right on that picture were actually the local team, not the winning team, but the local team. And those steps on which they're standing are still there. So, as we'll find out a wee bit later. But it's a nice way in which he kept involved with the Great Central and such like right the way through. Although his engines don't seem to fit with the other stuff. Right, a nice picture for James on his 21st birthday in 1913, picture that turned up in Wombwell Library, amazingly. You'll see the squire is sat down in the middle of the group. The guy in the light coloured jacket is James on his 21st birthday. To James's immediate left is George Bernard Shaw. and to his immediate right is manager Elliot, the manager of the Bournemouth Main Colliery Company, who we shall encounter again a bit later. Now, it's a nice view because Bernard Shaw didn't go to anniversaries and things like that. He was a funny sort of guy, and getting him to go to things like that was very unusual. But he was an ardent motorist. Bartholomew was an ardent founding member of the RAC, and the two got to know each other in the automobile club. So they were buddies in that way. So but then you start looking, and at about that sort of time, Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion, later to become My Fair Lady, yeah, which is basically the story of two educated gentlemen trying to educate a common working class girl, many years their junior, in the ethics and everything of posh living. The squire's partner, Sarah, was 15 to 20 years his junior, was the cook from a neighbouring village.
Right, okay.
So, you know, you can put two and two together and get a few hundred, but I'm not saying it's right. It's just quite
It's
possibly,
a nice theory though, isn't it?
it's quite possibly that Sarah was actually the role model at that time for Eliza Doolittle. You can make these things up. Nobody can disprove it now.
Well, no.
Another view of the hall. So it was, you know, they put the money into the stuff around there. So it's a nice sort of view. What they also did was during the First World War, he set up a refugee camp, not a refugee camp, a camp for injured soldiers for recovery. This is a genuine postcard, which was there. So the stuff on the bottom is from Charles William Bartholomew. Our boys, some of the 400 already received, and they're standing in the doorway to the hall there. And infuriatingly, the postmark doesn't enable you to work out what year it is or date. There's not enough of the darn thing there to reveal it, but it's another nice item connected with it. And as you saw, this got an embossed Blakesley Hall logo on the card. Right, this is taken in the 1930s. The squire himself died in 1919. There's no mention in his will of the railway. There's plenty in about his livestock and his dead stock and his drinks and things of that sort. This picture is the family in the 1930s. In the foreground is Sarah Floyd, stroke Bartholomew, stroke Eliza Doolittle, as she would have looked. Bearing in mind she was 1865, so 35, so she was about 65 at the time. Of course, she was the matriarch by then, the squire having died in 1919. The girl in the pigtails is relevant to our story in a little while as well. She was Hermione Bartholomew, the eldest granddaughter of the squire. But it's just a quite nice family group. And that was taken at about the same time. It's a dreadful family snapshot in the mid-30s. One of the girls is Hermione. But the thing it makes clear is that the loco is still in full original livery at that time. There have been suggestions that it was painted blue or something at one period, but that's in full livery for it as built. And it's also quite a good drawing if I can ever get it scaled properly to actually show the size of a Cagney carriage, because they weren't quite joined together. Just throw that one in it because the Stratford-on-Avon and Midland Junction Railway was the site of the public operation of the LMS Row Railer bus from Stratford through to Blisworth and such. So it would come through Blakesley. But of course, there's no chance of a photo of it passing Blacolvesley or anything anywhere on the route, but it's a nice connection with it. It's quite an innovative outfit there. Right, and we're in the 30s. Squire's dead. His stuff was being gradually whittled down, and here we think we're 99.999% sure is the Blakesley original Kagny at Dean's Mill down in Sussex. Why are we sure it's the correct one? It's the tender. Because if you look at the DMR on the tender, the D is in the wrong or foreshortened typeface compared to the elongated M and the R. The M is too near the R anyway to the D. All those fit with the photographs that we already have of the Blakesley, Kagny and Blakesley and such like. So fairly sure that that loco went to Dean's Mill. And probably the parts of the carriages, some of the carriages did as well. Obviously rebodied, but the wheel sets look right for the Kagny bogies that were, sorry, the Blakesley Kagny bogies that were produced. This is also Dean's Mill, because at the same time as they got the Kagny, they got this thing. Now, at that time at Blakesley, the 440 version of Petroleia was lying around derelict with the engine taken out for other purposes. And the guess, and it is only a guess, is that that is also Petroleia rebuilt, modified, rebuilt, etc. And eventually became Dreamland 359 later, which is this thing that, is it St. Jeremy's, not Jeremy, Jordan's looking at. The track fits in terms of its profile and everything with the Blakesley track. So we're 99% certain that most of the track from Blakesley came to Dean's Mill and some of the locos.
The poor driver must have been deafened in that.
Probably so. It is a petrol engine,
yeah,
you know, really
even so,
quiet.
I know they were quite quiet at that period, but it just looks, it's quite eccentric, isn't it, in the right way?
Yes.
Yes.
Equally, if you think about it, at the time, Sentinel had built a steam rail car for use on the Dykes branch from Brighton. Right, about the same period, which was a very streamlined thing. And if you look, you've got to look blooming hard to get the comparison, but you could easily rate it as a crude version of, of the Southern Railway Sentinel steam rail car. Okay. As we know, so that one, sadly, the Strumpshaw one is not the Blakesley original one, but it might be the Visitor. Okay. That's all we can say. It's certainly not the original. It hasn't got its smoke box dawn date plate, which one would need. It's a nice loco, but there's no proof that it was actually the Blakesley original, but it could have run. Just a general view, by the time I first went in 2003, I've mentioned that much of the ballast got nicked because it was good ballast for whatever purposes. The only sign of 15-inch gauge, if you look in the concrete by just leaving the gateway, you can see two lines of 15 inches apart, which is where the tracks had come in to go through the gates into the gardens and up to the back of the hall where the passengers would be carried to. Blakesley Village is in the distance there. So I hope those cast iron gates are still there and wrought iron gates, because that's definitely a nice bit of 15-inch gauge history. Then we get another interesting bit. This is 1944 at Leeds Crown Court. A lady, Dorothy Elliott, who was the treasurer and accountant and whatever else to the Woolwell Main Colliery Company, got done for 91,630 quid, nicked from the Woolwell Main Colliery Company. 91,630, and then was quite a sum.
You're getting off a million.
Oh, far over $1 million.
No,
About 5 to 10 million. But what's nice is the photograph that appeared in the newspaper shows not only Blacolvesley, but one of the carriages immediately in front of it. And Dorothy Elliott is visible at the bottom there. And what she did apparently was she created from the 30s a duplicate, 2 sets of books. One set of books was correct. One set of books presented a glorious, glowing picture of things. But fortunately, the chief exec of Woolwell Main Colliery Company was also on the banks board of the same company. And in 2 successive weeks, got a very rosy picture presented to the Woolwell Main shareholders and one to the bank's creditors, pointing out that 90,000 quid had been nicked. And that's how she was found out. So it quite an astonishing story, really. They sold everything to try and get money back, but they didn't get all that much back. Interestingly, as a picture, that's out of the Daily Express newspaper, and that I have the original of that, which came from Robin Buttrell, and it came from Matthew Kerr. The earlier Matthew Kerr.
Yes.
So it's quite a good, genuine one. And what is even more strange is that because that woman, she got all the money. Yeah, okay, she made a nice house for herself. She did nice clothes and things, but she spent it all on the locality.
Right. Okay.
So even today,
So
she's
Robin
treated
Hood.
as a Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Yeah. She really is, and that's all I can say. She got done for 6 years penal servitude.
Did she live in Roomwell?
Huh? Oh
She-
yeah.
Oh, well,
yeah.
she would be a hero there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Is the picture at Blakesley still then with the loco and the carriage? Or are they somewhere else by this point?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, they because of all the kerfuffle, and as I say, he didn't make any. The Squire didn't make any provision for his railway or anything. So somehow, but they didn't feature, because the railway thing didn't feature in the prosecution case, because she didn't pay any money to get them.
Right. Okay.
So all we can conclude is that the Bartholomews took them back,
Mhm.
and then eventually, from after her, so she'd acquired them, if you like, free of charge or whatever, and then after this, they were taken back by the family.
Right.
And we
Okay.
get onto the story of that afterwards. You can see the snow on the ground on the photo
Mhm.
there. So it's quite a nice little tale.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's very, very definitely seen as a Lady Bountiful. And that's about right. Okay. So the loco moves on again. Having been recovered, they somehow sold it on. It went to a Mr. Younger of Ponteland on his Redlands Railway, 15-inch gauge Redlands Railway, down his drive. We've not been able to find a photograph, but Peter Scott found this shot in the newspaper of a holidays at home thing in Bull Park in Newcastle. And that's Yvonne, as we've already seen thing of it. It's a nice, it's the best we've found of it so far. So anyway, it went somewhere to Mr. Younger of the Ponteland. He died in about 1943 or so. No, shortly after the war ended. But it effectively, therefore, it became available again. And this was taken on by the Dunn family, building a new railway at Saltburn. This is a very newly discovered picture, effectively. The lady on it is known as Grandma Dunn these days, but it's a beautiful picture, and it shows several important things. The dome is missing, but equally the dome on the loco was cast iron, and it was broken, but we've still got it because the broken cast iron dome is under a sheet metal repair job, and then lots of P38 filler on top of that. So it's still the original dome. But what's particularly critical is where the firebox is between the safety valve cover and the tank, there is no carburettor. Why? Oh, sorry, what's relevant of that? Photo of a year or so later, again at Saltburn, it shows there's a carburettor fitted, which is the Austinate engine. It was converted at Saltburn. So the original NAG engine was taken out and that one put in. So it's now got the Austinate engine in it, but it's still got the original radiator. And that's the only picture we know of which shows the original radiator. So that's a nice picture.
So the Dunn family were dealers, weren't they?
They did. They built several of them. There were several sites. So and we know it ran at Saltburn for quite a bit, but it also went to 2 other lines in the area as well. But
and one of their descendants is involved with the fort, well,
Yeah.
which was their last
Yeah.
project at Warren Lido.
Yeah. This picture came via the family. I think Sue Kitson, Laird or something. I've got the details and I acknowledge it at the end. The other thing I like about that is that this is the start of the .com revolution. It's the only logo I've ever seen with a full stop for its name.
It's quite stylish, though, isn't it?
Nice, splendid, fully lined out, and you know, fully shaded full stop as well. It's a bit of clever work, and you can also see that it regularly fell off the track, judging by the markings on the on the bogies. But it's a lovely picture, this now. And as I say, that's a Harold Botel picture, which shows it. And we're still back with the Blakesley carriages, but having been rebodied again. So what was left of the Blakesley carriages after the stuff at Woolmill were there, and there were two of them there. The third one we think stayed at Dean's Mill and was probably scrapped. So we think we can account for all three of the bogie carriages, but it's still there. It's still number 2 Redlands Railway, number 2,
Yes.
Yvonne. Now I mentioned the engine. When they did the re-engineing, they took out the 1500cc NAG engine and put this Austin 8 engine in it of 900cc. But to fit it in, they had to hack the main frames, certainly on the left-hand side, so there was barely an inch of frame left. Quite a frightening thing just to fit that extra bit in. So, but they now had an engine which ran much higher speed, much lower power. So the thing would go off like a rocket. Couldn't pull very much or anything. It was fairly useless, but it came out of a fire pump or something of that kind. It then got and this is the idiom of the time, it got streamlined. Still a Saltburn miniature railway, SMR on the sides. Is the attempt at streamlining it with a grill in the smoke box. The 2 coaches and such like. Again, nice picture. This is the old Saltburn miniature railway while it was still on that side of the water. Because of course now it's over on the far side where all the caravans and things are. But then came coronation year. And the Duns, I think it was the Duns, it might have been Saltburn Motor Services by that time. But anyway, they painted it in a special coronation livery of gold and silver with red, white and blue lining. SMR on it and the name Elizabeth. I know of no other locomotive in this country that was decorated in that way for the coronation. Named and specially liveried. And tomorrow will be the 70th anniversary to the day of the coronation in 1953. Just by chance on that bit.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I really love at that is the British working man on holiday. 2 flat caps, fags hanging out of the mouths, overcoats belted up and everything. That's a British summer holiday, that is.
Is that a turntable?
Yes, yes.
Oh gosh.
Because they actually landed up turning it each time because it was such a drag trying to drive backwards.
Right, okay.
At the sort of speeds. But yes, it had a turntable, fairly primitive one, but that was there. And that's we've not got the rest of it. Well, we have got the rest of it, but not painted in that colour. That's it in its original coronation paintwork, gold and silver. SMR.
No, that could look quite good like that for its 50th anniversary, isn't it?
Well, you missed the chance now, you see. I mean, we did have that on display in the museum for the 70th Jubilee Queen thing last year. We actually put that up to show it. But the back of it is painted red. But it's a nice survivor, is that. Right, it carried on its travels. After Saltburn, it got disused at Saltburn, and it was handed on. John Tate got hold of it with Little Giant and Petroleia for his railway at Haswell. Hey, I've remembered the name. I'm terrible at remembering the name Haswell. Anyway, Haswell, that's a VZ picture. which has been on in various things. So that's it running at Haswell. That's it. It got painted up in North Eastern Railway livery. Ernie Cheeseman took it in hand and, whilst retaining the obstinate engine, inserted chain drives to reduce the speed. So to reduce the output speed and increase the power effectively. So it works, and it still works like that, and that's how it is still fitted. But you got the noisy chains slopping around, whereas before it was a very quiet machine. That was a Dr. Mike Taylor picture. That. Then in 1975, then landed up at Darlington for the Stockton and Darlington celebrations, by which time Cheeseman had done his, had done his work there with NER on the side, all black. Livery, a reasonable livery for it. And then in 1976, guess where? That picture is very sad because it is the last photo we know of the loco with its original chimney. Sorry, chimney there, safety valve, whistle. I'll get it right in a minute, the whistle. Because it was stolen while it was here in 1976. And the whistle it's been carrying from 1994 after I got it. David Clay made it out of solid brass.
Right, okay.
Turned it out of solid brass, but that's a shame. Up till that point, it had still got its original whistle. And then you start thinking about it. How was the whistle powered? This is a petrol loco. Well, it was actually fed from the exhaust pipe.
Oh.
With a control pipe to get it from the exhaust pipe.
Steam crane.
Yes, we had Ernest cranes there. Yeah.
Was it working at this point?
No.
Had it fallen out? The crane was working.
No,
but the loco.
The loco wasn't. It hadn't been working at Darlington either. So I don't know when it had last run there. It went to the Haywood exhibition at the NRM, as you can see, without a whistle. But then yet another variation on the livery of LNER lined red stuff. Now, indeed, LNER 1326 was a 444, but it was actually a 3-cylinder one. So the number's right, but the design of the loco is completely wrong. And obviously, you've got Little Giant. You've got a bit of River Ert poking in on the extreme left. I think that's the Ert poking in on the extreme left there. And the lightweight Haywood brake van. It then came to Lightwater Valley. And at part of the time it was at Lightwater Valley, it was sent off with Little Giant and 2 Barlow Pacifics to the Isle of Wight to set up the Medina Valley Railroad, I think it was called. That was intended down there. But fortunately, Little Giant and Petroleia came back. The 2 Barlows were scrapped. So that was rather sad.
Did Lightwater Valley own it at this point?
A little bit. Well, I bought it from Lightwater
Right, okay.
Valley. So the actual full systems of it, I'm not fully sure of, but that's how I got it in '94. Robin Butterell had been pressing for quite a while to get it preserved.
Right, okay.
Robin was a great guy, but hadn't got any money because he'd had too many marriages and
Right, okay.
such like. And therefore couldn't afford to buy it, so I landed up with it. During attempts at restoration, this is quite a reasonable view, which shows the radiator has been replaced, obviously, with a more conventional ordinary radiator. The copper water tank is probably also a replacement, but it's the right thing and fitting in the right place. Can't see the engine very well, and there's all the exhaust piping and such like floating around. But it gives you a basic idea that the fundamental concept of the green they had was with radiator, water tank in the boiler. If you want to add more water, the high point of the water system is the dome, is in the dome. And that's what you got. August 1994. no names, no pack drill.
Oh, go on, Bob, go on.
What, you mean Mr. Gledhill? Yeah. Somebody claimed to have some hair or something at that time. That was me. I claimed to have that. In fact, that was our Pete took that photo. But that was the first time we managed to get it running. We spent a gang of us spent a whole day trying to get it going, led by Neil Glover. Because Neil Glover at that time had a reputation for being able to get petrol engine vehicles going.
Right, okay,
With his fire engine
yes,
interest. Neil was one of the stalwarts of that. So we got it going. And once Uncle Ron had gone out, we went for a gallop down platform 1 and back with it.
did it on the track?
Of course.
Yes.
But we had to do some stuff later to keep it on the track. That was a straight run, you know.
Yes,
Round the turntable area. Forget it. It just come out. Robin Butterall, who was the instigator of my problems and such like, in that. So that's it at Cleethorpes, which he went to in '95. It actually looked quite nice without the marks, wording on the tank side. It's a more respectable one. The works plates at that time were rubber, magnetized rubber things, just to make it look vaguely decent. But that same weekend, there are 5 4-coupled Little Giants together. My loco not running, genuine Little Giant, production class 10, production class 20, and Sinolver. The lineup of them all. So in the 3 of the 4 15-inch gauge railways, early days, had Bassett Loke Little Giant type locos. My loco, 1909 Blakesley, 1912 Sinolver, and 1920 whatever at the Hyam Railway. That photo was taken. Yeah, anyway, I've got the date somewhere. But quite a nice setting there. During 1997, my wife and I produced a scale driver for Blacolvesley. So here's Matthew screaming his head off at the age of about 7 weeks. Perishing, it was in December. And I did finally manage to get a picture which should have been taken umpteen times at Blakesley, but never was, except for that one picture I showed earlier of 48151 coming through. And at that time, David Smith's son, Richard, and Pete, my son Pete, were best friends at school in Wakefield at that time. So, made a nice picture like that. It shows the bridge also before it got its wooden barricades to stop you committing suicide over the bridge.
yeah. It just has rust these days. Yeah.
No, air gaps actually, I think, more than anything. He went out for a run on the 20th of July 2000. We took it to nearly as far as the Leet Bridge beyond Doncaster Mill, just to give it a run. That's the longest, we think, the longest run it has ever had in its life, from Ravenglass station to the Leet and back. But quite pleasant.
It's a nice picture.
Well, we stopped the train to it. I had David Taylor as pilotman. I think Steve Wood controlled, because we were after service, of course, and David Taylor as pilotman on it. About the same time, I found in a shop in London, in Bond Street, I know it's a 442, it's a an LNW 442 type machine, but painted in full Great Northern livery, almost certainly by Bing of Nuremberg, 1914. So we're getting into quite a hairy period. The only bit of paint change that had been done on the loco was the back of the cab. On the back of the cab had been repainted black and the words British made neatly painted on. But I'll not say anything more than that. But it's definitely a Bing of Nuremberg one. Now, I had this bogie, but I only had one bogie, and if I was ever going to build a bogie carriage, I needed 2 bogies. So there's the one where we got it. Dickie Rothery made me some new end plates and bits for that, and started to build the replica bits. Carey Williams of Chicago, who I'd been in contact with and was getting Kagny bits and pieces, he says, well, shall I get you some genuine Kagny bits? So he got from Oklahoma City, he got 4 complete wheel sets and all the axle box sets and all the bits, brought them over in his hand luggage. Some of it was hand luggage, some of it was in the case in there. But unfortunately, Heathrow didn't manage to deliver the case.
Oh,
Yeah, but it was fine, because therefore he couldn't bring this lot through customs.
yeah.
So the following day it was delivered to our house direct. So we built a second one, but they're genuine 1903 Cagney carriage wheel sets and all the bits and pieces. And although it's difficult to tell from this particular pictures, they had ball bearings in the races. So full ball bearings in the things, and end spot ball bearings as well to rub against the stuff. So they were quite sophisticated for 1903.
Yes. When you compare them to what some celebrated people in this country producing at that time, that's quite innovative.
Yeah. Oh, the bits are still around. In 2007, it was invited for the 40th anniversary, I think it was, yes, of Saltburn Railway, and we took it along. Obviously, now on its new alignment, that bridge was the original alignment on that side of the river. So we were in 2007, and I took the opportunity to take the SMR plate along. So didn't get around to painting the loco for obvious reasons. And then we hit got the Centenary. This was the 11th of September 2009. You can name many of the people there. Reg Blacklock, there's David Humphreys, all sorts of people. We managed to get David Clay and his daughter at the end there. The lady in red, she was the clerk who worked for Dorothy Elliott, who'd nicked all the money.
You're right.
That lovely lady. I particularly enjoyed introducing her to members of the family.
Oh, did you recoil?
I won't show you the picture, but I've got it.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a chance to celebrate it. It was on the 11th of September, and the day before it, I received a scribbled note in an envelope and in a parcel, brown paper parcel. And in the brown paper parcel was Hermione, pigtailed Hermione Bartholomew, who had sent along for the loco for its centenary day, so that her grandfather could ride on his engine again, an ivory bust of the squire. And her instruction thereafter was that it was to stay with the locomotive and not be returned to the family.
And has it stayed with the locomotive?
It's as near as it can get.
Yeah.
It can be taken out at any moment and put on it, but it's a magnificent ivory. Obviously, way before CITES got relevant. But, so he had a ride on his loco on his centenary day, but he never got. If you remember at the start, we couldn't get him on the engine for a photo.
No.
Hanging onto the side of it. But, we did celebrated the 100th birthday with some Flowers beer from Stratford-on-Avon, which I found in Morrison's supermarket in Wakefield. Got to get these things while you find them.
Yes.
And the lady in the white skirt, she was from the Blakesley Hall estate. She lived in one of the two gatehouses on the Blakesley Hall estate. You know, we made a good, nice little centenary do of it. I don't know where that is, but yes, Scone. It was at Cleethorpes, yeah. I think it went to Cleethorpes. It was a great little place. I think it was okay. It's difficult to photograph things, but considering what we managed to get in at the time, I think it was excellent. Yeah. So that was a nice sight. And then this is not the Maundy Thursday fire in the workshop. This was the previous December when the paint shop caught fire. And unfortunately, this loco was right against the seat of the fire. Number one, the bunny was damaged slightly, but you can see the amount of damage sustained on the parts of the loco. Fortunately, I never kept the side sheets on the loco when it was stored. So fortunately, they didn't get damaged in the fire. The thing that was perhaps most disappointing, that the wheel in the cab, which was the gear selector, was plastic coated for 1909.
Right, okay.
And it went up like nitrate film would, which is what caused quite a lot of the damage, sadly, to it. But we got quotations. It was insured. We got quotations from via RSA and that, and Jim and Helen Shackle did it up. That was it at Perrygrove, after they'd done it up on the turntable at Perrygrove. So rather nice job they did of it, but beware of fires. And finally, at long last, I actually managed to get a photograph of Blacolvesley and the Kagny together.
But still not the Blakesley one.
Still not the Blakesley. It's got a domed firebox, so it's too modern. You would have needed a straight boiler to be absolutely correct. But it was Simon's, so and it was there and it was working, and my loco was working, so we sat the two together like that. And basically, the loco I regard now as basically it's now what 100. It was 1909, so it's 114. Basically, I regard it as a sort of a operable but preserved. So I've seen no great push to get it in steam again, so to speak. It's the engine in it was almost certainly the Austin 8, probably out of another fire pump, first and Second World War fire pump or whatever. But so there it is in that form. And the owner of the Blakesley Hall estate has long wished to build a new estate hall. He has planning permission under what was called Dummer's Law, which was an attempt by a government of various many years ago to actually bring some back to the rural community, a sort of the not quite the class system, but almost that, I think, nice thing. And that therefore is basically on the footprint of the old Blakesley Hall. On the right hand corner you can see a set of steps going down. Well, those are the ones that have appeared in a couple of the photos and such like. So basically, folks, that more or less is what I've got thus far, the story of the Blakesley Railway, the Bartholomew family, and Blakesley. But bearing in mind what Stuart said to me some time ago, you're not getting away without. That's the last time a steam tram, a British steam tram, ran on a British road. The last time, until somebody else manages it. But that was the 29th of September 1985, and that's Lytham Road in Blackpool.
And clearly the Bandit was in town as well because of the Trans Am there. What were you up to?
We complied completely with the Board of Trade requirements for the Wolverton and Stony Stratford tramway in 1922.
Right, okay.
And the documentation was on the tram to prove it at the time. There's no smoke visible, no visible moving parts.
It's a good fun for bootlegging beer across county lines, isn't it?
Yeah, that was the only time it was allowed to be in steam in Blackpool. It's that one trip.
And that's what Crouch now, isn't it?
It's still at Crouch, yes. Yeah. So I'm driving. The person next to me is the crew works manager. Later days, and alongside him is our Blackpool pilotman, because we had to have a pilotman with us to comply with the rules for that. So basically, that's it, folks. So if you want to fire on to questions of anything,
Go to your, as you've typed your thank you page, we'll go to it. So let's see what comments have come in. So Nigel commented early on there was very deep flanges.
Yep.
Yes.
That was about the bogies, the first photo of the bogie.
yeah. Well, the bogies that I got it with were not the originals, but the ones that I got near the end of my talk, which showed the ones that had come from Oklahoma, they are absolutely genuine Kagny bogies.
Right, okay.
So that those are right, if you like, for it. But good question. Yeah.
And Simon asked, are the coach bogies from Blakesley?
Well, one of them is genuine, but with new wheel sets. The other one is a replica, again made by Dickie Rothery.
Okay. And Nigel was guarding for Ron that day, so he missed your first run.
Oh, very sorry. It did run a little bit during that afternoon, but yeah.
Well, if people haven't seen it run, I think there's a video on YouTube still of it's at Saltburn.
Oh, it could well be. Yeah.
It-
They'd only made the one trip at
Yeah.
Saltburn after the.
And
There's a loco now. Kept no idea.
in a very safe place. And Simon has met. We mentioned Simon's real Cagney carriages earlier on.
Yeah.
And he has Cagney carriages, I expect you know, and it's not easy to know what to do with them because the profiles are so odd.
Well, the bogies have been trundled around, pushed around at Ravenglass, and have not fallen off. That's about all I can say for them here. Obviously, what is it's the locomotives, because they're Bassett Loke ones. They're very thin tyres, wheels effectively, and therefore one thing I haven't put in this is that we had extensions put on the outside of the driving wheels, but rings,
Right.
and they're set screwed into the original castings, so that if in the future we want to genuinely preserve, we can undo the set screws.
Right. Okay.
And we're back to the original wheel sets as supplied by Bassett Loke. Obviously well worn, but that's supplied.
Do you think it managed to get around all the corners of Blakesley? Okay.
No.
Because it's quite rigid, isn't it?
It is, and because I mentioned the front bogie is wrong, because only 3/4 of it is a proper bogie, and because there's a gearbox gets in the way of the other one. We know it came off here at times, particularly trying to get out of Dickie's place, the track, the layout that was in at that time up to there, and looking at photographs, I haven't put it in because I haven't yet managed to confirm it, but I think that Blakesley may have even pioneered the use of swing nose points on the frogs, because of risks of concerns about the not actually navigating the point work correctly. There's one photo and it's in Lilliput Barn. I've not managed to find an original, but one of the pictures of it, well, I've got the original Lilliput Barn and I can't quite tell from it, but it looks to me as though there's a lever running from the point lever to look what looks like spring nose points.
And Jody has asked, is there any chance of it going on display with Little Giant? Well, it has been on display.
It has been on display. I deliberately didn't include a picture of it doing that.
2015.
Yeah. Well, later than that.
So it was in the museum here for quite a while.
Yeah.
And but you know, it may appear in the future. You never know. Never say never to anything.
No.
At
the moment, it's secure.
Yes.
But it's again, I'm one of these people who, when I get beyond the point, I think things shouldn't be restored anymore, but should be preserved as they are. And I think we're getting to that stage really with that locomotive. I know it's not got the original engine in it. It's not got the original radiator in it. But basically all the drive stuff is there, all the wheel sets and everything, and all the bearings and such like, and the gearbox and such like are original, and cab controls and so on.
But, and to do anything, and being realistic, if you wanted it to operate and pull things, it's really too delicate. So you'd be better building an electric replica.
Yep, yes, you would.
That could have more substantial frames
Yes.
and things like that,
Yeah, I mean,
rather than destroying the original one.
yeah, I mean, Jim and Helen did a fantastic job restoring it after the fire. So we ran it at Perrygrove
Yes.
when they'd done it up, and it was beautiful. But it is still a piece of very ancient equipment, and
there's not another one. It's not.
Indeed.
It's a little giant. It's got comparators and near relations and things like that.
Yeah. Well, the good old Dr. Mike Taylor always wanted to build a 12-inch to the foot version.
Really. It would probably look very weird.
It would,
Yes,
totally wrong.
yeah.
But, yeah.
Hi, Bob. It's Trevor. Hi. Good
Hello
evening.
there.
Absolutely fascinating. That absolutely fascinating. I love actually because obviously having spoken with you over the years and read the book and a lot of the actual history of the locomotive I knew, or I thought I knew, but there's still fascinating bits came out. But I absolutely love the Pygmalion type story. That's fascinating, is that? And I like the Robin Hood lady. That sort of that was lovely.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether there's anybody on from Romney tonight, but at least you've got a photograph of the petrol engine rebuild at Blakesley, whereas they're still looking for a photograph of the Dymchurch turntable.
Yes.
So you're one up there.
Yeah.
In various rebuilds, and I think there was a Saltburn photograph. Is that when it gained the patch on the side of the boiler on the right-hand side?
The thing that, yeah, well, any of those, let's keep going.
We'll get that sorted. Nearly there.
But keep going, that one.
That one, yeah.
That one, yeah. That's the carburettor.
Right, yeah, I thought it was.
The obstinate engine when it was put in.
Yeah.
Although it was low power, 900C compared to 1500, it's got bits sticking out everywhere.
Yeah.
That's the carburettor.
I missed that bit when it came up. I just got distracted, but that's what it was, right?
Well, when that came, because it was a Harold Botel picture of 1948.
Yeah.
And it's still got the original radiator. So my assumption, and it's in Redlands Railway livery.
Yeah.
That one. But therefore, my assumption was that the Astinate engine had been put in by Younger.
Right.
Zealand, and it was the appearance of that picture only very recently that said, "Oh dear," or in words of crazy logic, which proved that no, it didn't have the Astinate engine when it first came at Saltburn.
Yeah.
So it was a later one. It's the .com photo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've got information.
Indeed. Yeah, I think that's a lovely picture. I really do.
Yeah. But it's absolutely fascinating to go sort of slightly off topic from direct ratty things to something that's got a history that brings it right into the ratty in its later years. But brilliant.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, anyway, thanks very much, guys. Good night, all.
Okay, thanks, Trevor.
Cheers. Good night.
Bob, it's Biggles here. Does Blacolvesley and Blakesley have the same sort of root as words? Is it a possibility?
So. The difficulty, of course, I say the name that's carried on the loco is apparently comes from the Courier Regis rolls of 1203. Now, don't ask me to explain what they are because I can't, but I do have Domesday Book, and there are 4 separate entries for Blakesley in the Domesday Book, and they all have sort of versions of that in there. So they're relatively similar, but the local village chat in the village itself, Blakesley itself, is that it may, and it's thought of it's the Black Ooze stream, which would fit quite nicely with Blacolvesley and such like. But was it that other people regard it was just a meandering brook, effectively, and therefore wasn't? So I haven't really got through that. And you say, what? Oh, there's. So I'm not sure on that one. And I don't know what the Redland Railway livery was, except we now know it's black and white. But no, sorry, don't know. They obviously did a very thorough rebuild of it, of repaint of it and such like, and put the new engine in and such like. So it was quite a bit of work.
There's interesting lining along when you go to that one, and they've lined along the top of the boiler.
Yes,
all the way along to the front.
yeah,
of the
weird.
box. Yeah,
and there's all sorts of bits of brasswork being added along the top of the tank and down there, and there should be ones vertically there, but not the ones across the top of the tank. Right?
They must have been scorching it summer with hats and suits and everything up.
Well, as I say, I think I still go for the. No, I've got to go a fair way back to that. I'm sorry, I didn't.
You've gone the wrong direction.
I've gone the wrong direction. Yeah. I just love the dress code of the British holidaymaker in that one. I think that is just so superb.
It's the diligence in painting the frames silver.
Yeah. But I know if somebody can disprove it, I'd be interested to hear. But I don't think any other locomotive at any gauge or anything was actually painted up for the coronation, which was the 2nd of June 1953. And I remember going to the street party for that, not our street party for that. Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Bob. That has been really interesting, fascinating. And as Trevor said, we have learned things that we probably didn't know. And what's really nice is there's been people's stories interwoven into it, which is what railways are really all about. We will be back next month. Dave could be doing a talk on the television personalities of Ravenglass Railway Museum featuring Claire Winterbourne, just so her family might find out, because she hasn't told them she appeared on my Portillo yet, but we can't confirm that will be the topic. But do keep an eye out on Facebook for announcement, but we will be aiming for the first Thursday in July. So once again, thank you all for watching, and we hope to see you all soon. Thank you.